Alright, so we're going to start Maya up again. And if we remember, here's our Maya folder. Here's my preferences. I'm going to delete the old preferences. And then I'm going to copy in my new preferences into this area. Okay, I already did it, so I don't need to do it again. So there they are. So now I have my previous preferences. And every day I come in, I'm going to copy my old preferences over here. Make sure I have them in there. Every day I leave, I'm going to take these preferences that are here that I've created and worked on throughout the class, and I'm going to copy them back. Okay. So here's my Maya, and if we remember, we have Alt D, and that's our delete history, graph editor, attribute editor, node editor, center pivot, da 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 da. And then Alt C is all of our polygon tools that we set up. Okay. So now we're going to set up one more. I'm going to go to this, make a new shelf. I'm just going to call it modifiers. Doesn't matter, call it whatever you want. So this is going to be under modify snap align object. We're going to add these align objects here. And they're going to be different ways that we can place objects in our scene. So hold Control Shift, snap align objects, and I'm going to go in the option box here. And you'll see that it actually takes me into the option box. So if I click on it, option box pops up. Alright, now this is kind of like a special situation because in here I have certain things that I want to happen depending on what the settings are. Okay, so in this case I'm going to show these beforehand so you can see what they do, and then we'll go into adding them in there. Alright, so let's say I have a box and I've duplicated it a bunch of times like this. The way that I duplicated that makes them evenly distributed. But what if I needed to change something? What if I said, well, I want these to be a bit closer now? You know, it's too much distance between them. I really want them to be a lot closer together. All right. So now they're not evenly distributed. You can see the spaces here, the space here, the space there. Okay. So what I can do is I can use a distribute. And you've probably seen this in other programs where it allows you to distribute things evenly. So I'm going to look at the direction that I'm going. And if I look at the arrow, this is a red arrow. And I know that red means X. I can see it even down here. The X is red. Red is X. So I only want to distribute it in the X direction, this direction. Because obviously it's not going to be distributed here or distributed there. It's just in the X direction. So I just make sure X is selected. Make sure distribute's on. And hit apply, and you'll see if I undo and redo that it automatically redistributes those and evenly aligns them. Okay, so that's what distribute does. Now there's also a stack, and I'm going to leave it on X as well, and you'll see that stack places them perfectly aligned right here. Even if I went and scaled these up and then hit the stack again, you'll see that it automatically stacks them next to each other. If I wanted a little bit of space, I can grab this guy and pull him over, grab them all, go back to distribute, and hit apply. So you can see why we might want to have certain features like this, just because it makes it a lot easier to bring these things, align these things correctly. Okay, and because this is all under this one menu here, if I set this thing up to, let's say, distribute, and I say align, and then I go back here and I add that into my align objects, you'll see that no matter which one I click here, let's grab these. Okay, if I click that, you can see it does redistribute them. But let's say I went in here and I wanted to distribute them in the Y direction. Okay, so now it's redistributed in the Y direction. But then I say, okay, well, I want to use my shortcut key for X now. So I go back here, click this, and you'll see that this is not working anymore. Even though before this one aligned it in the X, now it's not. What's happening is it's simply just going back to this tool and just redoing this tool. Whatever the options were last set to distribute in the Y, that's what it's going to do. So if I set this to stack in the Y, okay, and then I went back here and let's say I just nudge this up like that and just kind of move these like that, whatever, and went back here, you'll see that it just simply distributes it back in the Y direction. Okay, or stacks them in the Y direction. So we have to do this one a little bit differently. So I'm just going to right click and delete this, right click and delete this. Okay. We're going to use this guy down here next to the script editor, or next to the Mel line here is the help line, and next to that is our script editor. So if we look through here, everything that we're doing is laid out in some sort of script, okay? And a lot of it is just kind of like, I'm going to call it dummy proof. If you just kind of look at some of the stuff, you'll see align-y stack. So that's going to align the objects in the y direction, and it's going to stack them. That's what the command is, okay? So I'm going to test it out. I'm just going to grab, in this case I'll grab a sphere. Okay, so if I come down to here, make sure this is on Mel, I'm going to type in align-y stack, and then I hit the enter key on the numeric keypad, you'll see that it automatically stacks them. Okay, perfect. There's the align-y stack that I need to add to my shelf. Now how do I get it from here to there? All I have to do is highlight it and just middle drag this into my shelf. And it'll say, do you want to save it as a Mel or a Python or cancel? I'm going to do it as a Mel. Okay. Now I can't see what that one is, except when I hover my mouse over it. Down here, it'll tell me. So as I hover my mouse, you can see that down at the bottom, it's changing. Okay. So that's Y. So I'm going to drag it down here, actually, and change this to X. And middle drag it up there. I'm going to change it to Z. Middle drag it up there. Okay. Now I have three icons exactly the same. The only way I know their difference is down here. Okay, and you can see if I click on the X, it stacks them in the X direction. I click on Z, stacks them in the Z direction. Now this guy kind of fell out of place just because of where he was in the order. I'm just going to delete him for now. Okay, so that's aligning. So now let's see about distributing. What's the command for distributing? Snap align, align objects, distribute, and we'll just do it in the X direction first. Okay, and you'll see it, the command for distribute is align-x dist. Okay, so instead of that, we just put dist. So I'm just going to middle drag it up here. I'll change the X to a Y. I'll drag that up there. Change this to a Z. Middle drag that up there. Okay, so I can try it again. Okay, no difference. Okay, and the reason there's no difference, they're already distributed evenly. Okay, because they're stacked on top of each other. So I'll just move this one guy way out here and way out there. And then I'll go X, there we go, Y, and Z. And now they're distributed pretty evenly. Okay, now it may not look like it, but as far as the math goes inside Maya, it's figured that yes, that's distributed evenly. Okay. Maybe I'll take this guy and pull him this way. There we go. So now that looks a little bit more even. And I can still go back and stack these so they're on top of each other. Okay. So now we have those. Now there's another one that we want to add to this, which is the align mode. Okay. So I'm going to do the mins, just so you can see it. And right now the mins, when I go to these, you'll see if I go to distribution or stacking, that this guy gets grayed out. If I go to this, these align twos are set to selection average or last selected. I always like to have it on last selected object. It gives me a little bit more control over it. So we'll just do the first one, min, X, enter, and you'll see that in the X direction, it lined up their minimum points to this last selected object. Okay. If I selected this one last and did it, you'll see how they all popped back here. Okay. If I did this as an average, it just kind of finds the average of it. You can see why I like the last selected, because I can choose which object I want them to be aligned to in this case. Okay. Gives you a little bit more control. So now if we look at this, align ATL-X min. Okay, so let's type that down here. Align-ATL-X min. Okay, so we'll highlight it, middle drag, put that there. Then we'll do Y. Do Z. Now you'll notice that the this -ATL, that's a new one that was in there. The other one just had align -X, whatever. The -ATL means align to last selected. That's what the L means. Okay, align to last selected. Okay, and just for fun, if we did select an average, you'll see that it actually just gets rid of the -ATL and doesn't have that there. All right. So I'm assuming if I went to the mid, that the last word, instead of being min, is just going to be mid. If I went to max, the last word would just be max. Okay, so it makes the scripting part of this a little bit easier. Let's change that to X again, and I'll type in mid. Now you might be asking yourself, doesn't this seem like a lot of work for, change that to max, for something that we can just go up to this menu and get? Well, you'd be surprised at how often you're going to want to use this kind of stuff. Okay. Alright, so now we are done with the script editor. We can close that. And now we have to go through and label these just so we know what they are. Okay, so I'm going to go into the script editor. So I'm going to go to the arrow, go to the shelf editor, not script editor. And you'll see that right now it's named align-Y stack, align-X stack, align-Z stack. Okay, I keep these in some sort of order. I go XYZ, XYZ, XYZ. That way it's alphabetical order. Okay, this first one is YXZ. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to click on this to move that guy down. See? So align X, align Y, align Z. X, Y, Z, X, Y, Z, X, Y, Z, X, Y, Z, X, Y, Z. If you need to change any of the commands, remember we can go to the command area, and that's where they do the actual script. Okay? So if we want to change this to, instead of being Y, we want to change it to Z, we just type Z there. Okay? So I'm just going to give this a name. Okay, so do AX, align X, stack. Okay. Now, if you look at some of my other things, they don't have any names under them. But if I go here, oops, not there, sorry. If I go here to options in the shelf editor, I can say icons and text below. So now you'll see X stack. Okay. So now let's go to, actually, because this is our align one, let's just do X stack. There we go. And we can even shorten it more. STK. Okay, then we'll do the same thing for Y. Y underscore STK. Go to Z, Z underscore. Okay, and then here's our X distribute, X underscore DST. Y underscore DST. So you can see how much easier this is going to be to read and figure out what it is we're doing. Okay, and here's our mid. So X underscore min, Y underscore min, Z underscore min. Now remember too that all this stuff is in an actual piece of text that we could actually go through and just create all stuff there. And a lot of people who are in industry, they'll just kind of create one, go into the text, and just copy paste all this stuff. It just makes it a lot easier. But as far as understanding the process, this makes it easier for you to understand the process of this by doing it over and over and over again. There we go. Okay, so now we'll go to Save All Shelves. And we'll close that. And there we are. Okay, so now at any point as I have these objects just kind of here, I could say, oh, I want them stacked in the X direction. I want them stacked in the Y direction. I want them stacked in the Z direction. Okay? Or I want them, let's see. Let's go to the Z here and let's align these. So it'd be Z, minimum. There we go. And let's get them in the X minimum too. Perfect. Okay. So a bunch of wild objects, we can just very quickly align them. Makes our job a lot easier. Alright, so now let's put this into a hotbox or a hotkey marking menu that we can edit. So Windows, Settings, Preferences, Marking Menu Editor. We're going to create a marking menu editor, and we'll call this Align. That's exactly what we're doing, is aligning. So the ones that we're going to use most, I typically don't use stack too often. I more likely use distribute and the mid here. Okay, so I'm going to go X, Y, Z for my distribute. Oops. Be there. Let's just right click and delete that one. There we go. And then my mid, X, Y, and Z. And then I'm just going to put the other ones down here. So there's my stacking ones. I'm going to right click and put a little divider, so a little insert separator there. And then I'll go to, let's see, distributes are there, my minimums. So I'll drop the X in, drop the Y in. Remember, just using the middle mouse button, dragging it on. I'll right click and add another separator. And then we'll do the max X. Oops. Y and Z. Okay. So now if I click down here, there it is. Now this one has the option box. You remember when I originally created it, I set the option box in there. So I'm going to go through and edit that one. So if I go to this, that's the Y stack. So I'm going to find the Y stack. I'm going to right click. I'm going to edit the menu item. And inside here, it says option box. I don't want the option box. I'm just going to check it off. So now if I come back here, perfect. Okay. So now I can hit save, close. And then I want to use this in my hotkey editor. Apply, close. Now I go to my settings preferences. I go to my hotkey editor. I scroll down to user marking menu. I go to my align. There it is. Now if we looked at the previous ones that we have, I just set that aside. We have Alt D. Okay, this is that one, remember. We have Alt C, which is that one. It might seem logical to do something like Alt F for the other ones, or Alt V. Alt V is a hotkey that I commonly use, which is the play button. Okay, so I don't want to use Alt V, so I will use Alt F. Okay, so let's try Alt F. Okay, we can query it just to see. It says it's set to flood surfaces from Artisan. Never use it in that fashion. We just hit assign, yes, save. Okay. All right, so now we hit Alt F, and there's our hotkey. Okay, so if we had a bunch of random objects, I'm just duplicating and just randomly placing these things. There we go. I can grab all the objects and I can stack them in the X direction. And I can stack them in the Y direction and stack them in the Z direction. Okay, so now they're all stacked. So what the stacking is, remember, if we go to the front view, is that it's stacking these. So this one, that one, that one, that one, and all these. Okay. Now, even though they're kind of random, it's still stacking them, but it's just not stacking them in the same order. Like right now, this guy, and this guy, and this guy, you know, they're all like stacked differently. So one thing I can do is, let's say we aligned the minimums. Where's my min? Alt F. Go to my minimum and set the Y up. There you go. So now they're all in line. And then I can go through and say, now stack them in the Y. And we'll get that sort of arrangement. Okay. Oops. Y min. And it's actually selecting them in the order they were created. Oops. Okay, so that's one of the reasons that's kind of scraggling them. If I select them in this order, you'll see they'll get different results. All I'm going to do like that much. Stack, there you go. I did a Y stack, so it went that way. And I can go this way with it. There we go. So you can see very quickly how I lined all these up just using those little hotkeys. Okay. So the mid just lines up the midpoints, the max lines up the max points, and the min lines up the min points, the max lines up the max, and the mids line up the mids. And usually what I'll use that for is, let's say I have a cylinder here, just randomly way over here, and then I create a sphere. I would grab my sphere, shift click this, and then I would just line up the midpoints in X, Y, and Z. And now I have that sphere perfectly aligned with this object. Okay? I can even align these this way with the Y. Oops. No, it did line up the midpoints. Okay. I wanted the Y stack. There we go. There we go. Okay. So very helpful tools, those things are. So I'm just going to go to File, save my preferences, make sure everything gets written out. Close Maya, don't save. And open up my Maya folder, open up my class folder, and I'm going to delete the ones from my class folder. Okay, make sure I'm in the right one, 2510, delete. Go to my Maya folder, right click, drag it over, and say copy. Or you can right click and copy, and then right click and paste. Or you can Control C, Control V, or whatever. Okay, now that we have that, we're done with our preferences. Now we can actually start working on stuff and using some of these hotkeys along the way. Even if I don't say to use the hotkey, you should be in the mindset to, whenever possible, make your work a lot easier. Okay, so use those hotkeys because it'll make your work a lot faster and a lot easier, and stuff will get done much more efficiently. Okay, and always have a backup of your preferences in several spots and all your projects.